When The Exorcist was released in 1973, it caused an immediate cultural firestorm, becoming one of the scariest and most controversial films of its time. Directed by William Friedkin and based on William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel, the film not only shocked audiences with its disturbing content, but also sparked debates about religion, censorship, and the boundaries of what is and isn't considered acceptable cinema. The film directly engaged with themes of faith, Catholicism, and the existence of evil. As a result, many religious leaders saw it as blasphemous and morally corrupting. In several countries, including the UK, the film faced censorship battles and was outright banned in some regions. Meanwhile, in the US, some theaters refused to screen it entirely. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops' Office of Film and Broadcasting officially stated that The Exorcist was not appropriate for general audiences. Beyond just Catholics, other denominations of Christianity, like Evangelical groups, protested the film, claiming it glorified Satan. Evangelist Billy Graham famously criticized The Exorcist, claiming, "The devil is in every frame of that film," implying the movie carried an intrinsic evil with it. There were reports of people fainting and vomiting while viewing the film in theaters. News outlets reported cases of cinematic hysteria, where people claimed they were possessed or had traumatic breakdowns after watching the film. Now, with all of that being said, The Exorcist is arguably one of the best Catholic movies ever made. I know, that might sound like a stretch considering it's extremely graphic and deeply unsettling.
Do you know what she did? Your canting daughter?
However, The Exorcist ultimately reinforces Catholic doctrine. It asserts the reality of good and evil, the authority of the church, and the power of faith and self-sacrifice. It does so in a way that avoids the heavy-handed messaging often found in poorly executed pro-Christian films. While the film contains shocking moments, notably the infamous
"Your mother sucks cocks in hell, Paris,"
these are narratively necessary to contrast the demonic evil of Pazuzu with the goodness embodied by the priests, like Father Karras and Father Merrin. The demon's blasphemous dialogue isn't indulgent. It's a deliberate portrayal of evil as something repulsive and confrontational, which the heroes of the film actively work to overcome. At the heart of the story is Father Damien Karras, a priest struggling with his belief in God. Educated in psychiatry, he's haunted by guilt over his mother's death, feeling he wasn't there when she needed him most. The guilt erodes his faith, leaving him more reliant on science than his religious calling. When Damien is called to help Regan, a possessed young girl, he initially searches for scientific explanations, dismissing the supernatural despite overwhelming evidence. Enter Father Merrin, who serves as Damien's foil. Merrin has no doubts. He is firm in his belief that Regan's affliction is purely demonic. This clash between Merrin's unwavering faith and Damien's skepticism intensifies Damien's internal conflict. And in the film's climax, Father Merrin dies, leaving Damien to make a final choice between faith and reason. In a moment of clarity, he abandons his psychiatric training and embraces faith. He demands the demon take him instead of Regan, and when it does, Damien sacrifices himself by leaping out a window, preventing the demon from taking control. The film continually explores the tension between religious faith and a scientific worldview, asking, what role does religion play in a modern, rational world? The answer seems to lie in the idea that some aspects of human experience, grief, guilt, sacrifice, and love, transcend reason. As long as these unexplainable elements exist, so too will faith. In the end, The Exorcist is a provocative story about a man rediscovering his faith through an ultimate act of selflessness. Father Damien Karras' journey is one of redemption through sacrifice. His final act, inviting the demon to possess him and then throwing himself from the window, is an echo of Christ's self-sacrifice. In Catholic theology, this is an act of ultimate love, to give one's life for another. his death restores his faith, and in doing so, reaffirms the power of Christ over evil. In a world growing increasingly skeptical of traditional religion, The Exorcist unapologetically asserts the power of Catholic rites and sacramentals, holy water, the crucifix, and the ancient words of the exorcism ritual. When Father Merrin arrives at the McNeil home, he carries himself with an air of unshakable authority. His reliance on ritual is not superstitious, it's methodical, confident, and rooted in centuries of tradition. The Church teaches that the sacraments aren't just symbolic, they are channels of real spiritual power. The film does not dilute or secularize this belief. It presents it as fact. Throughout the film, scientific and psychological approaches fail to cure Regan. Doctors, psychiatrists, and medical experts are baffled and powerless. It's only when the Church intervenes, invoking the ancient rite of exorcism, that progress is actually made. This is one of the biggest themes of the entire film, and that's the importance of Church authority and tradition. The exorcism rite, rooted in centuries of Catholic liturgy, is depicted not as superstition, but as a necessary spiritual weapon. Father Merrin, with his unwavering faith and seasoned experience, serves as a figure of absolute spiritual authority. The film suggests that in an increasingly secular world, God, and by extension the Church, still hold the keys to confronting true evil. The character of Chris McNeil is not Catholic, yet her love for her daughter compels her to seek help from the Church. Her journey mirrors a kind of conversion, as she comes to trust the Church's authority and power. Her story reflects the Catholic theme where one turns to God and his representatives, in this case, the priests, in moments of crisis. This part of the film is real. The Catholic Church will perform an exorcism on non-Catholics. They view it as an act of charity. In the film, Chris's faith in the ritual grows as she witnesses its effects, suggesting that even non-believers can find truth and redemption through the Church and God. The Exorcist is a reminder that spiritual warfare is ongoing, and complacency can have devastating consequences. The film doesn't offer easy answers, but instead calls its audience to confront the reality of evil and the necessity of faith. Faith, the film suggests, is not passive. It requires vigilance, prayer, and reliance on God's grace. That being said, though, some argue that The Exorcist fails at being a quality Catholic film because it relies heavily on shock and sensationalism rather than focusing on spiritual or theological depth. You could even say that The Exorcist gives far more attention to the demon's power than to the power of God. Regan's possession is shown in graphic, shocking detail, while the priests appear fragile, overwhelmed, and ultimately defeated. Both Father Merrin and Father Karras do die at the end of the film. Evil seems to dominate the narrative, and the film revels in its grotesque displays rather than highlighting the triumph of faith. Couldn't all of this undermine the film's supposed Catholic message? Well, I would disagree. The shock and horror serve a very deliberate purpose. First, to entertain, but second, to confront the audience with the visceral reality of evil. In Catholic theology, evil isn't abstract or symbolic. It's personal, it's aggressive, and it seeks to destroy. By showing the full extent of the demon's power, the film underscores why faith is necessary. Without true evil, there's no need for true faith. Additionally, the film doesn't exploit these shocking moments for cheap thrills. They are presented as part of the larger spiritual conflict. The vulgarity and grotesqueness of the possession are meant to repulse. Unlike many faith-based films that sugarcoat or sentimentalize belief, The Exorcist treats faith as something hard-earned, something forged through suffering and sacrifice. There is no preachiness, no condescending speeches, only raw, existential confrontation with the reality of evil. Catholicism doesn't shy away from suffering. I mean, if you know a Catholic, you probably know about a concept called Catholic guilt. Catholicism embraces suffering as a pathway to redemption. The crucifixion isn't this tidy feel-good story, and neither is The Exorcist. Yes, the possession scenes are intense and deeply unsettling, but this is precisely what makes the eventual triumph of faith so powerful. evil is portrayed as horrifying because it is horrifying. In the end, The Exorcist isn't about Reagan's possession. It's about Father Karras's redemption. Its Catholicism isn't incidental. It's foundational. It presents evil as real. It presents faith as necessary. It presents sacrifice as redemptive. For Catholics, the film isn't just a scary story. It's a meditation on the eternal struggle between good and evil, framed through the lens of Catholic theology. Evil is real, faith is essential, and redemption is possible.